Welcome to Pera's Playbook. This is your host, Alex Pera. Let's open up our playbook and see who our guest is. Please enjoy. Welcome to episode 144 of Pera's Playbook. Today we're joined by Steve Coulter. He's an actor and writer, and he's been in movies like The Conjuring and Insidious movies, Oppenheimer, Yellowstone, The Hunger Games, Walking Dead, Furious 7, Taken 3, House of Cards, The She-Hulk, and many other projects. He's written on some projects, and we'll discuss that and a number of other things on this podcast. Glad to have Steve here. How's it going?
Really well. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Are you a sports fan? Did you watch the Super Bowl last night?
I did. It was hard because I had been rooting for the Detroit Lions, as because they have just had Detroit fans have had a rough time for many, many, many years. And it was just such a great story. And
Yeah.
I was also rooting for the Bills. And so they got eliminated. I didn't really care who won yesterday, but actually, once the game started, I realized before even the scoring started, I went, I think I guess it was the first when the Chiefs had their first possession and they punted. I realized, and I felt good that they were punting. I went, I guess I'm rooting for the Eagles, which I think
Yeah.
I chose wisely. But yeah, I love football. I love baseball because I grew up when I was a little kid. I grew up about an hour outside of New York, so I was a big Yankee fan and a Mets fan. And I got to go like my very first baseball game. I was 8 years old, and it was Mickey Mantle's final season.
Wow.
And so I got to see Mickey Mantle play. And my father somehow got a ticket for us right behind home plate, about 9 rows back. And when you're a kid, back then, the sounds were a little better, but back then, when they hit the ball, it was this little sound. And so when I got to the stadium, and I heard the crack of the bat. It was just that's like 800 years ago now. And it was also the old Yankee Stadium, which was just towering. And and coincidentally, it was a doubleheader, a twilight doubleheader, which they don't do anymore, with the Detroit Tigers. And Al Kaline was playing, and oh yeah, so
Yeah.
Bill Freehan, I think, was the catcher. So yeah, I'm a big baseball fan and football fan. So yeah.
It's fun to go to ball game, live, go to a park. I've been to a couple White Sox game, been to Wrigley, and those were all fun. It's
Wrigley's,
just
yeah, I finally got to go to Wrigley. That's an amazing place to see a
yeah,
baseball game because there's probably the best fans in the world. I want to go to
right.
Fenway Park. I haven't been to Fenway yet, but
Yeah.
so, and I don't. You must be an immense hockey fan. I met my brother was incredible hockey because I'm Canadian, and I moved to the States when I was about 3, but he was there until he was in high school, and he was like the captain of the hockey team when he moved to the States. He coached hockey and everything, and but I just sort of missed that. I missed the hockey boat. I never got to really play. I skated a lot. We had a pond, but I never got to play hockey.
Yeah, hockey is huge up here. I didn't grow up
Oh
playing. I
yeah.
hated skating when I was a kid. I
Oh
enjoy
really?
skating now, but my parents said, do you want to skate? Nah. And they said that's okay because the hockey parents have to devote a lot of their year to traveling
Yeah.
and
Oh
I
yeah. You're driving all over the state, and yeah, that's like,
yeah,
golly,
but it's fun
wow.
sport to watch for sure. I mean,
It
it's
is. It's probably one of the most exciting sports live, and even if you don't follow the sport, because once in a while I'll turn on the TV and it'll be two teams. I don't even because now they have hockey teams everywhere. It's just like
yeah.
Fort Lauderdale or whatever, and but yeah, it's still very exciting to watch it. It's an astounding game.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a D1 university here. I'm in
Oh,
Houghton,
okay.
and Michigan Tech has a fairly good hockey program. Those are always fun games to go to. It's
Yeah,
good hockey, and like
yeah.
communities kind of centered around it and whatnot.
That's cool. That's really cool. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to be a baseball player, but I didn't. I was pretty good at Little League, but then I moved to South America when I was 9, and I moved back, and the baseball wasn't big in South America then. It got big the yeah, last year I was there, so I played a little bit. But then when I moved back to the States, all the kids had learned to throw a curveball. And if you have never seen a curveball, that was it for me. I was like, every time I ducked, it was nowhere near me. I didn't get to slowly get weaned into, the
Yeah.
world of curveballs and changeups. And I was like, what happened in 5 years?
Yeah. So
So
how come you moved to South America as a kid?
my dad, he worked for a Canadian aluminum company, Alcan, and he was offered a job to run a factory down there. And it was great. It wasn't dangerous. It was way before the cartels and all that. So it was a great, all my friends, I got to learn Spanish, and I went to this school that was kind of international. It was Colombians and British, Canadians, Americans. So it was kind of a great way to grow. It was a great, I was between the ages of 9 and 13, which is a great time. And yeah, so it was kind of fun.
Is that when
Learned to
you
play.
is that when you started to get into acting when you were in South America? Or was that
And
before or after?
actually, no, it was funny. I guess it was like the last year I was there. A friend of mine, I think he was running like the spotlight for a play. And I think he couldn't do it one night. And so he asked me if I could do it. It wasn't really hard. It was just, and I really liked the play. I think they were doing, if my memory is correct, I think they were doing Our Town. In Our Town, they had the one character called the stage manager who has these long speeches, and the guy was just really good. And I guess they, like they say, getting bitten by the bug. Something about it, I was like, that is so cool. And then a bunch of, a couple friends. Um, I had a sort of girl. Well, I had a girlfriend. We were going steady. I had her wear my ID bracelet back in those days. Uh, that's when you went a courting. And yeah, we did a little play out of some, I don't know, magazine or something. And when I got back to the States the next year, I was really, really, really shy. I didn't know anybody because when you move somewhere in ninth grade, it was a school that everybody had grown up together, so I didn't know anybody. And they had like a drama group, and so I joined that, and I started doing plays, and I just it was weird because I was painfully shy as a kid, like so bad that if they called on me to read, from a book in
Yeah.
class, I would almost cry. But somehow acting, I wasn't. It wasn't scary that way, and I just sort of kept doing it. Then through high school, and I was at when I knew I thought I was going to do it for a living. I had made the varsity soccer team in my senior year of high school, and I really liked it. I was a halfback. And then the drama teacher was also this really cool guy. He was an English teacher. They were doing this play, and he said, "We need you if you could do this part." They had auditioned, they couldn't find anyone. And I realized, well, I think that's what I'm going to do with my life. I'm not going to play professional soccer. I wasn't that good. And I think it was when I made that decision where I realized how seriously I was taking it. And I went to like a conservatory acting school, which is good and bad. I mean, I learned a lot of discipline, but you're very insulated too, and it's really hard. I mean, it's not like going in the Marines hard, but you're like working 16, 17 hours a day, and you're doing voice and combat gymnastics, dance, singing, Shakespeare, poetry, music theory, and but it did really prepare me pretty well. So yeah, but to answer your question, way back when it was, yeah, South America is when I first got that bug. But I also used to pretend a lot as a kid because I was kind of an only child, so I was always to make life more interesting. I always made the situation. I pretended my real parents had been killed, and that I'd been adopted by these other parents. That was my job. I was their bodyguard. I'm sure a therapist could tear that apart. But I really found that everyday life was boring. And me and my friends, we were always playing, Army or, World War II, and either play with GI Joes or pretending in the woods with our guns, and not real guns, BB guns, and just pretend guns. And that was the number one thing we did is we pretended stuff, and like weekend long things, stories and stuff. And I guess I love, it's really weird. I love acting, just the act of acting. It's not, not publicity, not recognition, because that kind of stuff is like, it's like icing on a cake. It doesn't stick to your ribs. But the act of acting, learning a character, doing the research and getting up there and feeling you've done enough of your work that you really are this guy. And if you get to do someone's really good script, you get to play people who are smarter than you. You get to play people who are bad guys and do bad things. You get to different accents. You get to really learn a lot in a concentrated way about different things. And you don't get bored. The trade-off is that you're unemployed a lot of the time, especially when you start out, because every
Yeah,
job is like your last job for a while. But and I tried, and I'm also, when you're starting out, you got to do all kinds of jobs. I drove limousines, I washed dishes, I did construction, I was a waiter, I was a bartender. But as an actor, your job is always different. And that's in a way, so like what you're doing is like you sound like the kind of person that couldn't work in an office. You need more stimulus than that. And you get to talk to different people every time. And so and I guess, it's a little, I'm sure your job too is a little nerve-wracking at times, just, stability wise. But yeah, it's a trade-off that I don't know how to do anything else really
yeah,
that I would enjoy as much. And that's why I put up with it for all this time. I almost quit a couple times, but
yeah, yeah.
stuck with it.
I don't like to sit still generally. I work at a high school. I'm a parapro, so I'm always doing different
What's a
things.
parapro?
It kind of like I feel like people used to call them teachers' aides, but like we have an online room and a testing center, so I'm in there for part of the day, and then I attend some
Uh,
classes to help students kind of one-on-one, and I go to study
yeah.
hall. But I get to do all kinds of neat stuff. Like we had the school had homecoming week, and I got to MC and lead the Jeopardy
Huh.
for the school, and so you get to do different things and every day is different. So I like that. I
Yeah.
could never be just sitting in an office day after day at the same desk doing
Yeah.
the same thing over and
Yeah,
over.
I couldn't. It's weird because people will ask actors, they say, "Hey, how was your weekend?" I'm like, "It's the same as the week, really." It's not. And when I was doing mainly theater, your day off when you're doing plays is Monday, so everyone else is going back to work on Monday, and that's your day off. And and I look forward to jobs versus like, oh, I got to go to work. It's more like, I would much rather be working than hanging out or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. So well, I'd like to talk about a few, specific things you've been in, but
Yeah.
kind of as a broad question. I mean, you've acted in horror movies, comedies, action, a little bit of everything. Is there a specific genre or role that you enjoy more than others?
I think comedy is just the funnest thing. I don't know. It's it kind of because it's harder in a way. It's weird when it's filmed because you don't have the live audience to play off of. But I like comedy. One genre I have not gotten to do, which I'd say is my favorite genre, is the Western. So I can't say, I once did, it didn't really count as a Western, but there was a guy who's doing a film. They're shooting in Kentucky, and he was from New York, and he'd written, directed it, and he called me up trying to sell me on the movie, and he started into this, his pitch, and I went, just hold on. Do I get to ride a horse? Because I knew it took place around the Civil War, and he goes, yeah. I went, I'll do it. And I'm not kidding. That's literally my only. It's like if I get to ride a horse, I'll go work there for 6 weeks, whatever. But yeah, I think comedy, horror is fun. It's weird because like I don't like horror movies. I don't like movies about like I love like what was it, Godzilla -1 or whatever. I like movies like that, but movies like The Conjuring and Insidious, they scare me too much because it's about evil. And those
Yeah,
guys, especially, I've only really worked with James Wan and his and his directors, and they're really good at scaring people. And I can't, even when I know how they did it, when I go to the movies, I'll still watch them like this. But they're very fun to make because I think, especially with that group, we tend to work with the same group of people. It's just a great bunch of people. And I think because the movie is so dramatic, during the making of it, it's a lot of fun because you take it seriously when you're doing it, but in between, everyone is making jokes and making light of them, making fun of each other. And I think that helps it so it's not too heavy-handed.
yeah.
You you bring joy and fun to it. But Yeah, I would say my favorite genre would be um well, I got to do when we did The Hunt. That was fun because I got to, I'm not pro gun, whatever, but I sure like to shoot guns in movies because like being a kid again. Like they in The Hunt, we had these assault rifles, and they gave us, we each had a sidearm that was based on like someone had a James Bond gun, someone had a gun based on different movies. This is because we were playing these rich people that were killing people, and it's just sort of fun. It's like you're 11 years old again. And I'm not a violent person, but I'd love to do. That's why I'd like to do a Western. I want a holster and
Yeah.
a Winchester. Yeah, I got
Yeah.
to do a show last year where I had this vintage Winchester, and it was better than being on the Broadway play.
Yeah. I love
Wow.
Westerns too. I'm always a big John Wayne fan and Clint Eastwood and all the
Yeah,
classic
yeah.
Westerns. I feel like people don't make as many Western. I mean, it's not as big of a genre anymore as it
No,
was
when I
back in
grew up,
the
yeah,
60s,
when I
70s.
yeah, especially in the 60s, when I grew up, there was like, oh my gosh, there was, the High Chaparral and Bonanza and what's his name? Yeah, there was like six or seven westerns a week. But
Right.
oh,
The
sorry, my
Rifleman and
dog,
all these.
the rifleman. Yes, my dogs have joined me up here. So, hey, they're like, "What are you doing up here?" I know, I'm talking. Yes,
He wanted to be a guest on the podcast too.
yes. Oh yeah, there you can see them. There they are. Hey, buddies. Hello. They're like-
A few people have had cats make cameos on the podcast, and different pets have had appearances.
And these guys sort of follow me wherever I go. Yes, I'm just talking to my new friend. Yes.
Yeah. So let's dive into a couple of your roles.
Sure.
One of them I wanted to mention was the Hunger Games. I just
Yeah.
watched the whole series over the last week.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and then I was doing a
It's
little
okay.
bit of watching some kind of behind the scenes. And obviously in the first game you were a game center tech behind,
Yes.
with Seneca Crane and I was watching that all those tables and stuff that was all kind of green screen. Um,
Yeah.
did you have to, since you couldn't actually see anything, it was green screen, did you have to memorize your hand movements for what you were
It
doing?
was funny. They did. It was because most of the folks in there were a lot of background folks, and then they gave us this manual, the special effects guys, of sort of what different things did, and we would have parameters of what. It wasn't too specific. Like I had a lot of freedom, but sounds odd, but I did in acting school. I We had a lot of mime training, which there's big money in mime. Um, but one of the biggest things you do is you have this thing where it's called grabbing points, where you have to grab, you just do and pull them down. So I was doing that, and I had a pretty good relationship with the director Gary, and he had me teach people how, because he liked what I was doing, and so they gave you just sort of perimeters. They knew what they would be creating the stuff months from then, because yeah, all you had was just green stuff and tennis balls hanging in the air. So yeah, we just had sort of like they gave us like a little kind of a little area, like don't go outside of this area, and then they would just create, like I had this thing, a sliding thing, and they basically just created it, matched my or our movements to that. Yeah, because it was kind of we were just sitting there just going shh, 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 shh. Then you just had to repeat that each time, and yeah, because I had no. It was fun to. It was very fun to see the movie. Like, oh, that's what we were doing. Okay.
Yeah. How long did that take to film?
That was about a week, as I recall, and then that was shot. We did that in it was an old, I think it was an old tobacco plant in North Carolina, in like Charlotte, outside of Charlotte. Several huge building that they just created sound stages inside this building, and yeah, but that was fun. That was a lot. I remember when I did that audition. I used to have this big old Mac laptop, big thing, and I brought it in with me. I had a little headset, and part of it was that I always tell actors you want to have fun at auditions, and I didn't do it to show off or anything. I just wanted to have fun. I thought, I had to drive all the way to North Carolina for this callback, and so I brought and I had programmed these little sounds and stuff, like I was firing things. I had lines and stuff, so I had all these things going. And when I finished, Gary said, "You want to be in my movie?" So, but the lesson I learned was like, if I'm having fun, they'll have fun. So,
Right.
but
Yeah.
but that was
And
that was a lot of fun.
in that a lot of those scenes, you would have been working with Wes Bentley, who was Senator
Yeah.
Crane, and then you worked with him again on Yellowstone.
And I didn't realize that till right now. I don't know what it says about my brain. I was like, oh my God, he was, yeah, because I did. Yeah, it was so funny. And we never talked about that. Because I didn't remember. I
Yeah.
thought, I remember, because I even remember when they introduced me, I thought that was the first time I'd ever met him. Boy, that says a lot about my little brain. Um, but that was a
That's
lot of
funny.
fun. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah. So you also more recently had a role in Oppenheimer. I have yet to see Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
I wanted to see it in the theaters, but my wife wanted to see Barbie.
Ah,
So we went and saw Barbie instead. And it's just such a long movie. I haven't I got to sit
yeah.
down. I got a rainy
I
day and watch it.
It is. It's not because I'm only in it briefly. Like everyone, when my agent, she got me the audition, and she said, "I don't know if you want to do this. It's only one day of working." And I said, "There's like half a dozen. Gary Oldman worked for one day." I was like, "I don't care. This is the work. I want to work with uh, with him." And it was with it was with Matt Damon and Cillian Murphy and all that. Yeah, it was great because I've really loved Christopher Nolan's movies, and he's really known. He knows exactly what he wants, but it's very fun to just be in this room with those actors who are all very kind and funny. And I got to make fun of Matt Damon, which was fun. I never met him before, but well, he did this thing where I've told the story a couple of times. We shot they do a lot of coverage, and there were about, gosh, maybe 8 of us in this room. It's around in the middle of the movie, and it was we'd done all the sort of wider, the shots of 2 or 3 people at a time, and then we had lunch, and then we came back, and he was shooting close-ups. He's going literally just one by one around. Started with what's his name, guy who played the Secretary of War, then Matt Damon's character, then Cillian Murphy, and all these. But Matt Damon told the story right before we did it. He said, "Oh, when he first started out, Ben Affleck had done more TV and had done more camera work, and he warned Matt. He said, try not to do your close-ups after lunch because all your blood has gone down to your digestive system, and your brain is not going to be able to concentrate as well, and you'll have trouble learning your lines." And sure enough, Matt started off, and he had been word perfect, the whole morning, all morning long, and he messed up his line. Then Cillian Murphy did his close-ups, and he was messing up his lines, and he had been perfect. And every actor messed up. And then it got to me, and I turned to Matt and I said, I hope I don't go Damon. And luckily, I didn't. I did my lines well, and then it was Matthew Modine, and I said, okay, Matt, don't go Damon on us. And when I say goodbye to Matt Damon, I just said, it was nice to meet you. I said, I guess it's true. You don't want to meet your heroes. So,
Yeah.
but I do recommend it. And it's not because I'm in the damn thing. It's, I think it's an amazing movie is that this, what, 3 hour movie about science, really. And it's not a lot of action. I mean, there is an atomic explosion. There's a spoiler alert. Uh, but it's amazing. It's really well edited. It moves really fast. It's pretty fascinating. I'd watch it on as big a screen as you can because
Yeah.
it is kind of epic. But yeah, I thought that was really good. Yeah. I didn't know it. I didn't think I was so surprised they did that well. I think it helped, that was the Barbenheimer thing. It got
Yeah.
people out. But I was really surprised it did as well because it's really a sort of, like I said, it's a movie about science and
Right.
but it's very suspenseful though. Very, very
Yeah.
suspenseful.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. Not just one weekend gonna have to And I have no problem
Yeah.
with long movies. There's a lot of movies, long movies are great movies, but you just have to have the time to sit down
Yeah.
and and watch it.
No, that's true. That's true.
Another movie of yours that I haven't seen but I want to, it looks funny, is The Shotgun Wedding. Was that
That's a
fun
lot.
to
Yeah.
film?
That's probably the most fun I've had. And mainly not just doing it, because I had a very fun character, because I was playing Jennifer Coolidge's husband. And it was during COVID, and we shot it in the Dominican Republic. And normally, when you go on location for a movie, actors are staying at sometimes one or two or three different hotels. Everyone shoots during the day, and they all go back to their hotel at night. But because of COVID, they had to keep the main cast together. So they put us up. It was ridiculous. None of us, Jennifer Lopez, well, she had her own house, so that was different. But they had us in this villa. It was owned by some woman who's a billionaire, Canadian billionaire woman. And so there's like 6 or 7 of us at this 5-star villa for like a month and a half. You're having, 5-course meals every day. And it was ridiculous. And everyone was so nice. There were no egos. Lenny Kravitz is there, and Darcy Carden, and all these people, Jennifer Coolidge. And we all just became really good friends. And there's a bunch of actors sitting around, but no one was talking about acting business. It was all just about kids and animals and hobbies and music and stuff. That's yeah, and it's a silly movie, but it's a lot of fun. It's just a
Yeah.
perfectly harmless sort of rom-com thing.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Yeah. I like rom-coms, harmless, fun movies. Sometimes you need that in
yeah, it's
life. Just
just
watch something
yeah.
fun
Now,
and
especially nowadays, the world is so upside down. It's
yeah, you
like
just
we
gotta
just
you
need to
want to
laugh.
laugh and smile and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
well, let's switch gears a little bit. You've also done some writing. You were a writer for Tyler
Yeah,
Perry's House of Pain and Meet
yeah,
the Browns. So what's the process with that? Like when you're writing a show, I mean, do you have creative liberty to write whatever you want? Are you working
yeah.
as a
It well,
team or
it was weird because I'd never written for television before. I'd done this. I'd written and directed a short film, and a long story short, I'd written a feature film script that won an award, and so I was trying to get financial backing, and I thought Tyler Perry might like it, so I got the script to him. And also that a copy of the short film. I got a call a week later, and they said, "Have you ever thought of writing for TV?" And I went, "Nope, not at all." So they hired me as part of the writing room, and I didn't know how writers' room worked, and that they had 11 writers, and it would be like, let's say you had your script and you really liked it, and then you brought it in. Well, then the other 10 people basically tear your script apart. They just go, they all add their own, and it gets very competitive. And the writer's room that I was in, the head writer, she was a good writer, but she sort of hired a lot of her friends that weren't as good writers as her. And so the writing quality wasn't that good. And it was really hard because I'd written this script I was very proud of. And even the producer he'd taken risk. He goes, I ran into him in the parking lot on the way into work, and he'd had the script over the weekend, and he showed me, look what I wrote. And on the front of the script he wrote magnificent. So my head got all, but then we went into the writer's room, and they just it was like sending your child off to school, and they come back with missing 2 arms and a foot, and they have a cow's head instead. You know. So that was the process, and so I did that for 2 years, and I really didn't like it because at the time Tyler Perry, he was so used to kind of improvising. He had this core group of actors he'd worked with for years in theater that were now he was working with. And he would just use the scripts as sort of outlines because he wasn't used to working with actors. I mean, with writers. But after 2 years, he fired everybody else and he kept me. And that could be a whole other podcast. But he kept me because he liked my scripts and he trusted the scripts. And so what he started doing was running like the way, because that's the way he runs a show is a very different model. And I'll do more of what when I became a head writer, I went and hired my own staff, and I hired really good story people that weren't necessarily TV writers because I could teach them how to write TV format. But they were great storytellers. They were just, one woman was a stand-up comedian, one guy wrote columns for barbershops. But the way it would work, the structure of it would be we would sit, I think we'd come in, it would be, weeks before shooting started, and we'd outline a whole season. Let's say we had to outline, see, because a typical season, well, now is like 12 episodes. Well, we had like 30 episodes because he would shoot 2 or 3 episodes a week, which is insane. I mean, most like a regular sitcom would be 1 episode a week. You'd go in on a Monday, do a reading. Tuesday, you'd have a rehearsal. Wednesday, rehearsal. Thursday, you might have a run through. Friday, you'd tape. But we would go bam, and they would do a read through in the morning, and then we'd go back and do rewrites, and then they'd have lunch and makeup, and then we'd shoot in the afternoon. So it'd be done by around dinner time. And when he hired me, they were so behind schedule. We had to rewrite about 10 episodes. We had to write from scratch 10 other episodes because it was for two. He made me head writer of two different shows at the same time. It's one of the most insane but most satisfying times of my life. But then he used to direct everything, but then he started hiring directors out of LA. So he started running it like a regular show but still we would shoot 2 episodes a week. And that's crazy. It's kind of like we're almost writing for live TV, but I really learned how to write fast and you learn to sort of rewrite as you're writing. So you write very specifically, you get right to the heart of a scene. When I would always get new writers I'd say just establish the conflict right away. The bigger the conflict, make that conflict impossible, because then the character is going to have to do something out of the ordinary to solve that problem. And it was a pretty good formula. And so when I've had to write for other things, like when I've had a deadline, one time I had to write a feature film script in 8 days from scratch. And I just got, good at, because when you write a first draft, and you just want to get it down on paper. But we didn't have time to do that. We had to, I mean, I remember one time we did a run through in the morning, a read through, and he didn't like the whole second half. So I had to run back to the writer's room and write the second half of the episode in about 30 minutes. Um, so it was a great education. It was really, really hard. I eventually just burned out on it. And plus, I wasn't seeing I had a teenage daughter at the time. I never saw her. So I finally just left. Um, but it was the thing about Tyler Perry is it was a pure meritocracy. It wasn't like, Hollywood, they say, oh, it's who you know. It was all about if you were good at what you did, you would get other work to do. He did that with he sometimes he'd pull an extra out of the background and give them a couple lines, and if they were good, they'd get other roles. He was very, very fair. It was very non. It wasn't no networking, none of that, and he actually hated that because some people tried to do that, and he just in that respect, I really liked it, but it was hard, and it helped my acting too because it's like learning the architecture of a building. You know where everything is and what makes a scene work and stuff like that. That was fun. And the funnest thing was like I wrote a scene that takes place at an apartment building. There's a fire. And the next week I go on set and there's this apartment building with fire escapes. And I felt like a little kid, like, I just wrote that. I just typed that on my laptop last week, and here's this building. And I get to do Tyler. That's another with the network show, like in LA, you'd have to put it to the producer, the showrunner. It has to be approved by the network. And if I had an idea, I would just go like there was this main character who had been the bad guy that kind of was the impetus for the whole show. He hurt this family so badly that they lost their home and everything and had to move it. And then he was a really, really, really bad character. I mean, he was evil drug dealer, crack dealer. And he had come back a couple of times over a few years. And I said, I want that character who ruined this family's life. I want him can he die of AIDS in the arms of this family? And I just went to Tyler's office and he went, okay, he can't die in the house, but other than that, so there's that kind of freedom, which is, and I could write parts for friends of mine who were actors in Atlanta who normally, I knew they had a very specific thing that they were good at. So I would create a character that catered exactly to those skills. So when they came in and auditioned for it, they were perfect for it because I wrote this part for them. So that was fun.
Yeah, that would be cool, to write something and then watch it get created, watch it be
Yeah,
built
that's
and
fun. Yeah, and that's what was terrible. That like the first episode I wrote, I wasn't on set when they shot it, and I didn't know that they changed everything. So I sat down in my living room and invited some friends over, and the episode came on, and it wasn't funny, and there was nothing. Maybe one or two lines that I had written were still in it, and that was the opposite. It was like I didn't order this. Can we send that back to the kitchen? All my friends were looking at me like, "You wrote this?" And I went, "No, none of that. That's not. No, no, no."
that's
But
funny.
but later on, that last year was great because like the episode I told you about, it was probably one of my happiest experiences as a writer because they shot it exactly as I'd written it, and they did it so well. And I had all the actors sign my script. I was that pleased with how they'd done it, and so yeah, it was fun. But acting's
Yeah.
so much easier. Writing is like being a parent because you got to raise the baby, you got to keep the baby alive, you got to feed it, you got to put clothes on it, you got to stay up with it all night. And an actor, I say, is like that drunk uncle. You come, you visit the house, you play with the kids, you go back to the hotel.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
that's a
acting's
fun
acting's
analogy.
yeah, because I'll be on the set like we were doing. I can't tell you what it was; it's a secret. But really, sort of large scale film, and I would just watch this director that had so much responsibility, and all I had to do was come in and go "Loo, loo, loo, loo," do my little stuff. But he had to stay there and edit this and all that responsibility in the schedule because I've directed some things, and it's just so consuming, and it's exhilarating but my God, it's exhausting and so much responsibility. And as an actor, you just come in and it's hard. I can't say it's hard work. I mean, it can be hard, but compared to, real jobs, so many actors, and especially like stars, they're very grateful and they are so aware that they are so lucky to be doing this for a living. And so often you can't believe you're getting paid to do it, like doing the Conjuring movies and running around in fog and stuff and whoo, and and they pay you and they give you free snacks all day and drive you and fly you first class. So but it kind of makes up for because at the beginning of an actor's career is so miserable and it's
Yeah,
so humiliating, it's so disappointing, and you're rejected so much and treated. Every actor has horror stories of just being treated like garbage or not getting paid or yeah. So I think it kind of makes up for the horror of the early days.
yeah, yeah. Do you have a favorite project? I mean, I know you've worked on a lot of things. It might be hard to pick, but
Yeah. I think part that in terms of a that shotgun wedding was maybe just the camaraderie of that. That's probably my favorite all around experience. But we did, I think, doing She-Hulk was probably one of the most rewarding because I had expected, since it was Marvel and Disney, that there'd be a lot of producers around and it would be very corporate. And it was the exact opposite. They had a huge budget and building these amazing sets and stuff, but it was like working on an independent film. The directors were all women and they were great. Better than for some reason, it really is a whole different energy when a woman is directing. Some of my best experiences have been with women directors. I don't know why it's just I don't know if it's maybe men are just more competitive or something, but I just felt much more freedom. It was fun and it was a comedy, so that's fun too. And I got to work with Tatiana Maslany, who's just amazing and kind, and it was challenging, and they would encourage you to try different things and stuff. Um, so I think that's probably the most enjoyable acting wise, I think that I did. I think, yeah.
yeah, right. I mean,
And if I'd done a Western, I would say it was.
well, there's still time, right? There's
I'll
still
come
time.
back when I've done a Western. Yes,
Yeah, yeah. Somebody's got to get you on a Western.
I
Be
know. I've told my agents I will do it for free. Because I know
you want to be
Kevin
the good guy or the
Costner.
bad guy?
I'd rather. I think I'd rather. Well, I'll do anything. Bad guy would be more fun. Bad guys are always more fun. As long as I get a horse and a six gun and a Winchester rifle and a cool hat, I think I'll
You'll
be
be
because
happy.
I when I was in South America, it was really my friend of mine lived way up in the Andes, and he lived up so far he had no electricity and no hot water, and he had about three or four horses, and I'd go up there and I'd sort of stay the weekend. And I mean, he just lived. His father was a sculptor or something. His mom was a school teacher. But we would play cowboys and Indians on real horses, like bareback. We'd ride up into the mountains and we'd we'd have fires and we'd have our BB guns strapped to our backs and we'd have knives. And yeah, so I just want to get to do that again. That's like,
Yeah. Most
yeah.
kids are they got the wooden horse with the little head and they're going through the living room, but you were on the
Yeah, I
real
had a real horse. We were like really, and one time we had this field trip. It was South America was great because every fall, the school, you could pick a place, and we went down to some little town. There's a volcano in southern Colombia. And one day we all got to rent horses, and all the roads were dirt roads. And me and my two best friends, we just rode through the country on this dirt road. And then we sort of split up for a while, and I went ahead of them and there was this little building that was like a little tiny snack place, and I tied up my horse and went in and sat at a table and had an orange soda, and then my friends, and then we rode into this little town, three guys across, like the Wild Bunch running in, yeah, and yeah,
Sounds like an exciting childhood.
that was fun. So, but I think that's yeah, and acting is just, it's really my daughter when she's now 31, but when she was about six or seven, she said, "Daddy, you just play dress up for your job." And it really kind of is. I mean, you really do kind of put on different costumes and like with She-Hulk, I got to wear these couple $1,000 suits and stuff. And you walk differently when you're wearing a really expensive. I was like, "Oh my God, this is like okay, all right." Or I played this British rock star once, and you got all the leather and the chains, and it is, you're playing dress up. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah,
and it doesn't seem like a job for a grown up sometimes, but hey,
right. You get to do all kinds of stuff without really doing it. You get to live all these kind of altered other lives, without actually endangering
yeah,
yourself for doing.
yeah. And it is weird when you do. I've only felt it a couple times in a film or TV thing. But when you do like a play, like I did a play last spring, and God, you put your heart and soul into it, and that is really hard to let go of because we're doing this, we're doing Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and it's so consuming and the camaraderie, and that is really hard to let go of. Movie stuff is a little different because movies, you shoot for 10 minutes and then you're off for 30 minutes sitting, waiting while they do lighting. So it's not as quite as intense all the time. But it is weird especially when you inhabit a character, and I don't want to sound all artsy fartsy, but when you're really playing someone who's really different from you, so you find yourself thinking thoughts you've never thought, feeling things you've never felt. It's really interesting. And I think it's one of the reasons I think actors, for better or for worse, you have to develop an empathy, especially if you're playing a bad guy. You have to think of, well, he thinks he's the hero of the story. He thinks what he's doing is a really, really good thing, even you think of remember in Schindler's List that Ray Fiennes, who played the head of the concentration camp, who's just pure evil, but he can't play that as if he's a bad guy. He has to think he's a good guy. You have to somehow justify what you're doing, because that's what Hitler probably thought he was doing a great thing. And criminals were breaking. A burglar doesn't think, "Oh, I'm going to go terrorize his family." He's like, "I'm going to go in there and I hope I get some good stuff." And so that's what's kind of fun. Like you said, but you don't have to have any of the consequences. I killed a guy once, in the heat of the night 34 years ago with a candlestick. And it was kind of fun. It was like, just feel like you get to behave really badly without any, without any of the consequences. And it's kind of interesting. It gives you it's fun insight into human beings. You sort of always go, I bet they've got a good reason for doing that. And so it
Yeah.
kind of helps you not to get too mad about things because everyone's doing the best they can.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it. Why don't we kind of wrap up the episode? I've never really asked anyone this question, but do you ever get sick of like talking about the stuff, talking about your career, talking about things? You ever
I
get
do.
bored?
Yeah, I sometimes you get like talking about yourself. If it's something like one thing I do like talking about, and there's not really time to do it now, is actually the process of acting. Because it's not that it's not it's not a noble thing or anything, but it can be so fascinating about how you really can get into someone else's soul and how. Yeah, because what's hard is when you go do a publicity thing for a movie, because they ask the same questions. You've asked some really nice questions, but sometimes it's just like I can't imagine. And I've only had to do it a few times, but they just ask the same questions because it's like they have to, and you really appreciate those people that come up with something original. Like this, that was like this last question. That's a really, really good question. Because especially if you hear, like even like I've told. Well, that Matt Damon story, I've told more friends about that than on a podcast or anything. But because sometimes you just hear yourself talking, you're like, ah, shut up. And it's like, or acting. I told my wife, if I ever call myself a storyteller, she can punch me in the face. Because a lot of actors go, we are storytellers. It's like, no, you're not. The person who wrote it, the woman or guy, they're telling the story. You're acting a story out. Um, Um, but yeah, I like sometimes it's yeah, it's like I'm not too keen about talking about like me and my it's
Yeah.
and it's fun. A nice thing about when you talked about the shotgun wedding, that brought back some really great memories because about just the kindness of how of people and how fun people can be and how generous people can be. Because I think I told my daughter, and I've said, this is what I try to live is I say, do more than is asked of you and be really kind. And I said that takes care of a whole lot of stuff because, the harder things get, you tend to pull into yourself and tend not to be as kind because life's hard sometimes. And whenever I am feeling like, ugh, I try to make sure I'm nicer to the checkout guy or woman at the grocery store, asking people about themselves. And yeah, because that's one thing that fascinates me. Like, that's why I asked you how you got into podcasting. Like, how does that because that's a daring thing to do to just go out on a limb and hope people will come listen to you. And
Yeah.
that's scary. That's
Hope
like,
people will come on as guests.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
I get a lot of great guests. I've got some wonderful guests lined up here over the next couple months, but you also get a lot of no's or a lot of
yeah.
people that read your message and they never answer. So you get both
Yeah,
worlds.
yeah. I try to always because I hate that when someone just doesn't, because all it takes is like, sorry, I'm not available, or da da
Right.
da da
Yeah,
da,
and I
you
appreciate
know.
any response.
And it's yeah, people are silly, and I understand people get really busy and things, and I've done that where someone said, I wrote you about 2 months ago. And I was like, I'm really sorry. I just missed it. I didn't see it. I had a friend of mine got really mad at me. He thought it was when I was writing for Tyler Perry, and he had sent me a note, and I just missed it, and so he assumed that I was like, "Oh, Mr. Writer, now I can't talk to you." I was like, "I just didn't see your email. I'm sorry." I was just
Yeah,
like, that's why. Yeah, when someone doesn't write me back, I always remember. Well, maybe it just,
right.
I, but yeah, but I
Life
always
is busy.
figure. But you can always just go, "Sorry, I'll da 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 da," you know.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Steve, I
yeah.
appreciate you coming on, sharing some insight into
Well,
your
thanks for
career and
inviting me. That's
experiences.
fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And good luck with the winter, and good luck with the podcast, and good luck at the school.
Yeah,
So
thank
yeah.
you. Thanks for listening. Please stay tuned for more episodes soon.